Earlier today, Donald Trump, a Fox News host, and a Fox News audience burst into laughter on live TV when Trump made a joke about a family grieving the death of a woman who died as a consequence of Donald Trump's Supreme Court justices overturning Roe v. Wade. It really is as disgusting as it sounds. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I thought it was done for the day because, quite frankly, I'm exhausted at the moment spiritually and mentally of today's politics, particularly because of MAGA Republicans and Donald Trump. But the more I thought about this clip, the more I was like, no, we really need to draw attention to this because this may be the most despicable thing that Trump and Fox News have done. I mean, certainly in recent memory. And when you consider all the terrible things they've done, particularly when it comes to demonizing, Haitian immigrants and others, it's a lot of competition, but here you go, okay? This is Donald Trump on a Fox News town hall hosted by Harris Faulkner. We're going to play the clip and I guess we'll unpack it together.
Amber Thurman's family have come out on a press call, and they're doing what's called a pre-buttal 2-hour town hall right now.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah? And I want to
get better ratings, I promise.
Amber Thurman.
So Amber Thurman is the name of a woman in Georgia who died as a consequence of a trigger law that was passed regarding reproductive care and women's health as a consequence of Donald Trump's Supreme Court justices overturning Roe v. Wade. He jokes, oh, it's nice that her grieving family is doing a pre-buttal to his town hall, and then says that he'll get higher ratings, as if that's what matters. And Harris Faulkner laughed, and so did the Fox News viewers. It's really disgusting. And I want to show you an ad that the Harris campaign actually released earlier today, featuring the tragic story of Amber Thurman. And then again, we'll unpack it together, and I've got some other clips for you as well. But this is the ad from the Harris campaign.
My daughter Amber made me so proud.
She was having complications.
And
tonight we are learning more about the death of Amber Thurman.
The death of Amber Thurman was likely preventable if she'd had access to abortion care in her home state of Georgia.
What happened to her was preventable. My daughter is gone because of what Donald Trump did.
For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it.
It's nothing good enough to bring her back. Her life is over.
I've never been a political person, never. I'm voting for Kamala Harris because she showed me she really cared. I felt her sincerity, and I felt her strength.
We will speak her name, Amber Nicole Thurman.
I felt her compassion. We will never get Amber back, but we can make sure this never happens again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
It's a very serious, sobering, compelling ad. And this is the story that Donald Trump, Harris Faulkner, and a Fox News audience saw fit to mock. Now, before I play clips, some other clips I want to show you from this disastrous town hall, I want you to think about something. I'm going to throw a name out there that you may have heard of. It certainly featured a lot earlier in the year, and that is Laken Riley. Laken Riley was a woman who was murdered by an undocumented migrant, and her murder was used by Republicans across the country as a way to attack President Biden and Vice President Harris. No doubt a tragedy. So I want you to imagine something. Imagine that this Fox News town hall was an MSNBC town hall. And instead of Donald Trump, it was Kamala Harris. And instead of Harris Faulkner, it was Rachel Maddow. And instead of a Fox News right-wing audience, it was a liberal or progressive audience on MSNBC. And I want you to imagine in this hypothetical that Rachel Maddow says, hey, the grieving family of Laken Riley is doing a pre-buttal, Madam Vice President, to this town hall. And then Vice President Kamala Harris turns and says, oh, that's nice. We're going to get higher ratings, though. And then Rachel Maddow burst into laughter, and so too did the MSNBC audience. I want you to imagine that scenario, which is fictional. It did not happen. But imagine that scenario, and imagine how Harris Faulkner, those Fox News viewers, Donald Trump, and MAGA Republicans, and quite frankly, even the rest of mainstream media would react. Basically, if the shoe was on the other foot. Well, they would be apoplectic. They would be furious, and rightly so. The thing is, the reason that that's never going to happen is because unlike Donald Trump, Kamala Harris isn't a ghoul. Unlike Harris Faulkner, Rachel Maddow isn't a ghoul. MSNBC, generally speaking, is not as ghoulish as Fox. MAGA Republicans think it's funny to laugh at people who die as a consequence of Donald Trump's actions. That is something that the left really doesn't look at in the same way. We certainly don't have presidential candidates who campaign on such cruelty. The staggering double standard, it's really frustrating. It really is. It's part of the things that makes this difficult political project even more difficult, knowing that the right has already so many institutional advantages: the Electoral College, gerrymandering, the Senate, the Supreme Court, 30 out of 50 state legislatures. And on top of all of that, they get to say and do whatever the hell they want with impunity and are not held to the same basic standard that they tried to impose on everybody else. And to the extent that you and I play a role in that, we have to make it our mission to say, no, when you say shit like that, you're going to suffer an electoral political consequence. If for nothing else, friends, if you're an eligible voter, I think you should consider voting against Donald Trump, if for nothing else than to punish that sort of behavior and say, hey, listen, you will not be permitted to succeed politically and electorally when you're this cruel. When you're this cruel and you say shit like this, you're going to lose inevitably, relentlessly. So change your attitude. If for nothing else, of course, there are many other reasons as well. The other thing I want to point out is during the course of the town hall, Donald Trump was asked about how he would lower costs, childcare costs in particular. It's not the first time he's been asked this question. I want you to hear his answer.
Kind of realistic changes that, do you think you can provide single parents, married parents, any kind of parent to just simply afford children in today's world with the way things are?
Right? It is not fair.
No.
You never heard of Ivanka, right? Ivanka. My daughter drove me crazy on this. We had the simplest, most beautiful I gave you the largest tax cuts in the history of our country, okay? Larger than the Reagan cuts, larger. But my daughter, Ivanka, she said, Dad, we have to do tax credits for women, for the child tax credits. She was driving me crazy. Then I did it, and I got it just about done. Dad, you've got to double it up. I said, Ivanka, it was actually more complicated than the entire bill, but I got it done. And what we're going to do, and I'm going to make, because I understand exactly what you're saying, we're going to readjust things so that it's fair to everybody, because it's really not fair to everybody.
So the best he can do is say, hey, there was a tax credit, which there was a child tax credit under Donald Trump, but there were under previous presidents as well. And quite frankly, under President Biden and Vice President Harris, they doubled the enhanced child tax credit. It cut child poverty in half under President Biden and Vice President Harris. And then every Senate Republican voted to sunset it. They didn't vote to renew the enhanced child tax credit, which cut child poverty in half. And then when Senate Democrats brought it back up just a few months ago to try to resurrect it again, Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, wouldn't vote for it, even though he says he supports it, because he doesn't want to give President Biden and Vice President Harris a political win. So this is the closest to a substantive policy answer Trump can offer. And then really he just says, we're going to readjust things and do things differently. Now, someone pointed out on Twitter, this is the fourth time Trump has been asked for practical solutions for increasing childcare costs, and he still doesn't have a plan. It is embarrassing, the lack of answers that Donald Trump is able to provide. And he's supposedly the policy wonk, the guy who understands, who has a real grasp of policy. If Vice President Harris answered a question like that, it would be one mainstream news headline after another about how she can't speak to substantive issues. But again, Trump, he's had 4 bites at the apple and still can't land it. Pretty pathetic stuff, indicative of his incompetence and disinterest in policy. One other clip I want to show you in which Donald Trump, seemingly, well, no, I shouldn't say seemingly, he does, blow the dust off the 2020 big lie to the extent that he ever left it alone long enough for it to collect dust in the first place. And Harris Faulkner, who's part of the network that had to pay $800 million to settle a defamation case about those big lies, really wants to change the subject.
But I have made it a couple of days before, so, But Your energy bill, which is a very big bill, will be down 50% starting on 1 year from January 20th. We take office, if we win this election, and I just, it's beyond like, I didn't need to do this. I really didn't. I saw what was happening, and I said, I have to do it again. We had a great election in 2020. We had an election that was much better than 2016.
Let me ask you this.
And I said, we have to do it again. We're going to get the prices down. We can't just leave them up there because it's going to take too long for people to catch up. That's why I did the social
we have to reset.
No,
I don't know how.
Do you see the 1,000-yard stare at first? Like, let me ask you this. She tried to change the subject, and Donald Trump continued to meander his way out of, danger with the 2020 election big lie. Fox, of course, and probably their attorneys are freaking out like, oh my God, please don't bring this up again, given that we had to pay nearly $1 billion. So interesting attempt by Harris Faulkner to reframe and distract Trump. But fortunately, he distracted himself out of that particular tangent. But of all these clips, and there are many more, but that's it as far as what I'm going to show you. You should definitely see the whole thing if you have an appetite, or like you have a glutton for punishment. If you're a glutton for punishment, if you have a stamina for that sort of like psychic abuse, then feel free. But again, I just go back to the very beginning. Donald Trump, Harris Faulkner, and Fox News viewers in an audience laughed at a grieving family who died as a consequence of Donald Trump's decision to stack the Supreme Court with 3 right-wing justices, a decision that he constantly brags about, that he's responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade. He's culpable for it. And so you should make him electorally culpable for it by voting against him in November. And in the meantime, again, while you think about that, also consider what would happen if the shoe was on the other foot. Food for thought. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.